Good afternoon, everyone. Sunday, May 17th, 2020. Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well. As usual, I'm going to wait just a minute for some people to come on in here. Big day. Big day. Hope you guys are having a good Sunday. And everybody's doing well. This episode is thankfully brought to you guys by BioTrust in the year 2020. It's so important to keep your body healthy all the time. Collagen may be the closest thing we'll ever get to a real sort of fountain of youth, while also forming a wall of defense between your immune system and the rest of your body. The older you are, the more likely it's caught your attention, and for good reason. Many health experts now agree that consuming collagen is as crucial as it gets to renew and revitalize how you look and feel. Oh my gosh. So this stuff is really amazing. It doesn't taste like anything. It's great in that you could put it in hot or cold drinks, whatever you want, and it tastes like you're drinking whatever you were drinking before. It helps your hair a whole bunch. Your hair is not thin anymore. It helps your nails become stronger. It just works, and I've been using it for a while now, so I'm vouching for it. Head on over there. Go to healthwithbeans.com. Give them some support. And thank them for sponsoring the channel. So, let me just bring in my Facebook pals. Somebody's telling me not to blubber over Nunes. Whatever that means. Blubbering over Nunes on first of all, it's my channel. Second of all, why in the world would I do something like that? That's crazy. So, hello to Facebook people that are here now with us. We were blessed to have been joined by Congressman Devin Nunes on Friday, and we spent an hour with him, and it was a really amazing interview. There are so many things that I wanted to say to Congressman Nunes or questions I wanted to ask, and the hour flew by in like 2 seconds. He's so thorough and detailed, and you'll see he answers these questions very explicit, very, very detailed. If you guys have already heard this because you listened to me and subscribed to the podcast, that's fantastic. This is probably the last time, for at least a very long while, that I'm going to put a podcast on YouTube. I'm just telling you. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, thanks to you guys and your support. We're doing a lot of things, and the interview was fantastic, and Congressman Nunes said he would come on again. So there's that. But I had so many more questions that I didn't get to ask. So many more. And it was a little bit, I was upset because I had so many more things that I wanted to ask him. But I love this. It came out great. He's fantastic. Let's give it a listen. And here is, for all of you guys, Congressman Devin Nunes.
RadioInfluence.com. The future is now.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a very, very special Friday edition of the Dark to Light podcast with
Frank and
Beans. Frank, we told everybody to listen on Friday.
Oh, and it's Friday. It's Friday, all right. This is good.
Guys, we are honored to have just completed an interview with the absolutely amazing Congressman Devin Nunes.
Yes.
And he spent about 50 minutes with us, which was gracious upon gracious. He's just a fantastic human being. And I don't even think we need to intro anything else. I mean, the interview speaks for itself.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit afterwards just to give some final wrap-ups. But please, just sit back, relax, enjoy yourself, and there you have it.
So it is a very special Friday edition of the Dark to Light podcast because Frank and I are so honored to be able to introduce to the Dark to Light audience Congressman Devin Nunes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, it's great to be with both of you, and I just want to thank you for all the great work that you both have done, bringing light to and transparency to this whole Russia hoax and the impeachment hoax and everything we've been dealing with over the last 4 years, if it wasn't for what I like to call citizen journalists and citizen podcasters like yourselves and hundreds of you that are out there, we wouldn't be where we are today. And of course, we're not finished. We're nowhere close to being finished, but it's an honor for me to be on your show, and I just want to thank you for your service. It's really important that we get out there and exercise our First Amendment rights, because we do not have a free and fair press in this country. We have a press that looks a hell of a lot more like the old Soviet Union style Pravda or the China Daily that comes out of the Chinese Communist Party. So thank you for having me, and please, and just call me Devin for the rest of the show. You don't have to call me a congressman or anything like that.
Oh, well, gee, thank you.
Here.
That's
here, Devin.
So there's one person, I think, of all, because I'm on the ground and Frank's on the ground, we talk to everybody. If there's one person people kind of hold up as their champion throughout all of this horrible scandal, it's you. You have had the most courage, conviction, determination. I mean, you're like a hero to so many people, including myself. And I have so many questions, but I guess I'll start here. Right after the election in 2016, once the president was inaugurated, you were on the transition team, and then you see some reports, and you were the very first person to basically tell people without telling people about this unmasking that went on. Can you elaborate on that any further now that we're 3 years down the road about what you were thinking back then?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it was one of the last issues that we needed to get out there, and I was very thankful that the new director of national intelligence, Grinnell, or acting director, was able to get this out, because people needed to know exactly what went on. And this is only one part of the unmasking. Those were and my doubt is that this doesn't even have to do with the actual call that Flynn had with the ambassador. If you look at a lot of those unmaskings, they occurred before he had spoke to the ambassador. So those were from other intelligence reports. It wasn't just the infamous call that Flynn had of the ambassador. But what they were doing is they were unmasking everybody. And sorry for that. If you hear that bell in the background, that's because I'm in the Capitol right now, and we're going to have a vote on here pretty soon. But it takes us like 4 hours to vote now, because we have to. Unlike everybody else that can just go to Costco or Whole Foods or Walmart or whatever and stand 6 feet apart with a mask on, in Congress, we only 40 of us can vote at a time for some strange reason that I can't explain. But anyway, so I don't have to get off the podcast. We've got plenty of time.
Okay.
Safety first.
So yeah, well, my name is in, so I'm towards the middle. So it's all like alphabetical order, like we're in grammar school again. That's the order we go in.
Vote no, whatever it is. Vote no, please.
Well, we can come back. We'll come back to that. But,
okay.
Let me. So the unmasking that was occurring on what it looked to me like any Intel product they had that looked like it was a Trump transition person or anybody affiliated with Trump. They were all unmasking it, but all of them, they were all doing it, which you can see just by the sample that you have now on what was declassified, who was unmasking Flynn, which, by the way, none of that should have ever been classified, by the way. And when I went out, when I first discovered that, and then was able to review it, and I said at the time, several dozen, I just said, look, this is wrong. This is just basically reverse targeting, and that's when they really came out. If you look back at it, they really came after me at that point. And, little did I know, just how deep all these guys were into it and why they were so nervous about this, because this was really only a small part of the larger Russia hoax. So that's, and if you back up just a little bit into 16, and I think you guys have probably talked about this, about it, but when we first heard about this Russia stuff, the American people ignored it, even though it was a narrative the Clinton campaign was trying to build. No one took it seriously, including the American people. And even right after the election, we were briefed on election interference, which by the way, is quite common. None of this is unusual. The fact that the DNC got hacked and Podesta's emails got hacked, and that's totally normal. It happens every single day to all politicians, all political parties, all government agencies. And, we've been warning people for years about the Russians, the Chinese, Iranians, North Koreans, and other just bad non-state actors that are constantly going to be looking to hack, anything that's related to the United States government, just to gather intel and steal secrets. Not to mention, a lot of the corporations and technology companies in this country. So with all that said, we get briefed right after the election. All the agencies are in there. It's all normal. Nothing unusual happened. It was all predictable. Everything that we know about the Russians, what they always do. Maybe a lot of this, people hadn't talked about it in years, but none of this was unusual. And it wasn't until after they tried what I call the fake news gambit. That was where Mark Zuckerberg and Obama went out and started talking about, it's all about Trump's use of Facebook and it was fake news on Facebook, blah, blah, blah. That's why we lost the election. And of course, as you guys know, 10 days later, Trump says, no, you guys are the fake news, and turned it on them. And, Trump didn't make up the term fake news. Obama did.
Right.
And Zuckerberg did. They made up the term fake news. And then it was after that Brennan and Clapper and the Obama administration began what I call the Obama dossier, which was the intelligence community assessment. Remember, all 17 agencies supposedly did this, and of course, miraculously, it was the fastest comprehensive report ever done in the history of the United States government. It was turned around, basically in just a couple weeks, and then Obama waves it around and says, I'm going to kick you Russians out. And, nobody at that point knew what the hell was going on, right? And then the Senate got briefed in December. And, of course, I can't remember if it broke in either the Washington Post or New York Times. And the story was that, the Russians were trying to help Trump. Well, their problem was we already had a month after the election where we never got any of that. That was never part of anything that we were briefed on. In fact, it was, by all the intel people we had been already briefed on, it was total normal behavior. And then if you go back in time, the hypocrisy of all of this is that the House Republicans on the Intelligence Committee were so sick and tired of the Obama administration playing footsie with Putin. They were the ones that made love with Putin. Okay, it wasn't Trump, it was them. They wanted to get the Iran deal done. They let Putin go into Syria. They botched that. They let Putin screw around in Libya, North Africa. I mean, just on and on and on. All the things that we weren't ready for. And Obama let Putin do whatever the hell he wanted. And so the idea that we were frustrated in the spring of 2016, so much so because they were refusing our capabilities to that we use to go after what in the intelligence world are called high value targets. They were refusing to spend money that we had allocated them as Congress. So I came out and finally went out and made what I would think would be a pretty important statement that the largest intelligence failure since 9/11, 2001, was our inability to understand Putin's plans and intentions. And it really was. I mean, you got Putin running around all over the place making us look like fools. We have the largest military and spend the most money on military and intelligence. And here we are, they're running circles around us, making look foolish. So, and this had built up over time. It was years of work that we were doing, kind of calling BS on their behavior and their willingness to tolerate Putin's aggressive actions. So it culminated in the spring of 2016 with me, ripping them publicly. So to think back, and I'm sorry to just go on that kind of that story, but I think it's important for you to have the background so you can imagine, and it's there where Fusion GPS and the Clinton campaign and the dirty cops at the FBI, when I'm out there criticizing them for not taking Putin seriously, they're actually engineering the biggest hoax and scandal in American history to try to frame Donald Trump and the Republicans with having something to do with Russia. It's just quite incredible. So sorry to pontificate, but I think that lays kind of the basis of how I got involved in this and how I knew from the very beginning this was nonsense. And then of course when I discovered the unmaskings, then I knew that something more nefarious was going on.
Yeah, I have so many things that sprung right off that. It was really important that you actually laid the
Same
foundation.
Here.
Yeah, so okay, so let's talk about the ICA for a second, and then I want to go back to Fusion GPS because I have something that only you can probably answer, if you can even answer it. The ICA, there was one agency under the leadership of one person that did not agree with the conclusion in the ICA. It was Admiral Rogers that didn't agree. Do you know what was going on internally between those agencies at the time, other than James Comey fighting to put the dossier into the ICA and Brennan saying no and all the other nonsense we know happened now?
Well, I would be really careful to believe anything that's out there that's been written about this, because the way that I view this is that Brennan, both Brennan and Comey were very well. And this, I'm looking at this. It's easier to look back and play Monday morning quarterback now, right, as we get more information and we begin to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. I look back now, Comey, Brennan, McCabe, they all knew about this dossier. They knew the gig. They knew about Clinton's involvement, and they deliberately hid this from Congress. And I know that because we questioned them, Paul Ryan, myself, McConnell, and the original Gang of Eight meeting, right before they went to brief President-elect Trump. So this would have been in early January 2017. When this was presented to us, we're like, what the hell? Where did this come from? And people in that room knew where it came from. And all they basically told us, well, we believe it originated with Republicans. And we were like, whoa, that's kind of weird, because it was kind of like throwing a scent. Like, we're kind of thinking, and I remember leaving there talking to Ryan and like, you think Ted Cruz would have done this? That's kind of weird. Like, that seems pretty elaborate, lots of weird stuff, P-tapes and prostitutes in Moscow. And, because when you hear it, it's ridiculous. It sounded ridiculous from the beginning. And then, of course, when it became public and I read it as somebody who's been a consumer of intelligence, I mean, there was nothing, it didn't even look like an intelligence product. It looked like, something, a high school student would write that was a decent writer. Just fictional. So Comey, Brennan, they knew exactly what was going on. So anything else you've heard, everything they did with the ICA, that was all to, Obama's dossier. That was, they knew exactly what they were doing. I think the only difference with Admiral Rogers is that he probably had never seen that dossier at all, would be my guess. And he just had bits and pieces of intel. And if you go back and you look at like what I said earlier, it's not unusual for the Russians or anybody else for that matter to be hacking us. So I think probably if he had his, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but my guess is that he didn't want much to do with this, which is why he only gave it a moderate confidence or something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was
probably no more. It was probably no more complicated than that, and I believe that they probably took Rogers, who was a career, admiral. He didn't play politics. He was a professional. He probably didn't know all this was going on. Would be my guess.
When you were talking about you made a couple of pieces click together that I think a lot of people might have considered on their own. First of all, the hacking, the phishing, things like that being normal since everybody started using the internet as just a normal consumer product in their everyday lives back in the 90s with AOL. That's just being normal. I mean, for years, if you talked about outside threats, you were called a McCarthyite. And then all of a sudden, I feel like in 2016, late 2016, it's 1983 again, all of a sudden, from the people who would say, hey, stop with the nonsense. But the other thing there, too, is like you said, Devin, is Libya, Iran deal, the Syria red line, Ukraine, that hot mic moment with Medvedev with missile defense.
Right. I thank you for. I knew I was missing something big. The incursion into Crimea. That's the biggest one of all.
Yeah, you're talking about, and these are the people who immediately shifted their position to be Russia hawks. So that's the reason why I'm looking at this, and I'm saying it was one of the first points you made. Why the dozens of requests to unmask weeks before even the call with Kislyak? I was wondering, was this really It was this really what was the impetus for the unmasking? And were they really anticipating the call from Kislyak? Were the Russian sanctions that were thrown out there and booting of diplomats and all that? Was that really, did they knew that was going to happen, or was there something else or a little bit more of a solid lead as to why this call would be happening? The whole thing doesn't make sense.
Well, I would say don't think about it too. It's not really that complicated. Okay. If you go back and look, we know that we caught them doing this during the Iran deal. If you go back and look at the Iran deal, there were leaks that were occurring. I believe I don't want to misname the news agency that got the leaks, but there was at least one, if not two, news agencies that were getting leaks of what appeared to be, some type of intelligence a product of some kind. And we went back and looked at that. So we had already seen them doing this once before, where the only place they could have gotten this was from an intelligence product of some kind, and they had to have been unmasking it and then leaking it, and that was to help promote their Iran deal. So we had kind of seen this before. So I believe, and if you look at like Samantha Power and a few of the others, they just kept doing it. They never stopped, even though they were supposed to. They were supposed to stop. We had Clapper, who had told us, "Oh yeah, we're really going to take care of this. We're taking this seriously," which I should have known. Which means they were doing, instead of taking it seriously, they probably doubled down. Which it appears like that's what they were doing, because these high-level officials would have very little reason to unmask anyone. And I would say that
they're using...
in all my time, I've never even had I can't remember of any time that I've ever read something and said, boy, I really need to know what, who this is or what company this might be. I've never done that. So I believe they figured it. They were probably doing it from the beginning. They did it during the Iran deal. All through 2016, a lot of them were doing it. And then after the election, they all went crazy, and they all started doing it. Ambassadors across the globe, all these Obama ambassadors, they just started reading they probably read more intelligence reports post-election than they read the entire 8 years that they were in office, and they were just unmasking anyone and everyone they could so that they could get intel and leak it, because they were totally shocked that Donald Trump had become president.
So that brings me to another question, actually. Thank you for that answer. This is awesome. Okay, so I did a little work on this. There was obviously abuse of the 702 database during the whole sort of campaign. Admiral Rogers kind of blew the whistle on that. And then there was a time when the HIPSI was going after Fusion GPS, trying to get their bank records, right? And I got my hands on the transcripts from some of those hearings in front of the judge to get those bank records. And, Fusion GPS is saying, well, if you guys want to see what we paid Christopher Steele, we'll give it to you. And the attorney for HIPSI was saying, no. We want to see broader intelligence community cooperation here, not just the Steele payments. Mm-hmm. Is there, I don't know if you can answer this, is there a suspicion, or do you know if Fusion GPS was actually working as an FBI contractor during this period?
Well, okay, so let me, so let's not, I want to take this, let's get the 702. The 702 issue, that is a separate issue in a different program, okay? There's always been some challenges with both that program, what's called the 215 program. And I always like to separate that out and put it in a box. Those programs have some challenges, but for the most part, they've been very successful. Okay, in terms of targeting, those are really CT, counterterrorism capabilities. The FISA issues that they abused are actually in permanent statute. So the 702 and 215 programs were stood up after 9/11 to use to target terrorists. The FISA program that was abused to target the Trump campaign and start in the counterintelligence investigation is actually a permanent law that's in permanent is a permanent statute. So I want to make sure everybody kind of understands
the difference.
That.
Right.
Yeah, the difference. It's a big and it's an important difference, because we don't have any evidence that 702 or 215 were used to for any political purposes, even though there's always going to be challenges because the technology is always changing, but we don't have any evidence of political malfeasance with those programs. Now,
so they were being abused, but not necessarily politically.
They're all, and I'm always careful to use the word abuse because it's so counterterrorism focused that the people that are in that line of work are really dedicated professionals, and so I think they've had some examples of mistakes, things they shouldn't have done, and we've constantly been monitoring that, and I would also say we have pretty good access to and oversight over those programs. Okay, I'm not saying they're perfect, and that's why we're always trying to improve them. Each time we reauthorize, we make more improvements to it.
Got it.
But the big challenge, okay, is that they used original FISA, the law that's in permanent in permanent law, and to used it, the counterintelligence part of that law, to target the Trump campaign. This is really the big challenge of, how do you fix this moving forward? It's not because it's not those programs that I put over there in the box. It's the main program that's the problem. Okay, so I only say that just to give you kind of a baseline, and I know we maybe lost a lot of people on this, but it's important to understand the difference in those programs. So when you get to the unmasking that was occurring, we don't know really on the Flynn, if the Flynn call itself, that with Kislyak actually ever made it into an intelligence report or not. We don't really know who leaked that. Okay, and you kind of know that by matching up the dates, right?
Yeah.
So that's, we don't know exactly where that came from, and how it got from whoever was recording it, how it got to the White House and everywhere else, including the Washington Post. All right. So, because we never found a report that I can remember on that call.
Could they have had a normal warrant through the FBI? Because there's a lawsuit going on for, the journalists are trying to get their hands on the General Flynn warrants at this point. There's an ongoing FOIA lawsuit, almost not FOIA, but disclosure lawsuit.
Look, anything is possible, right? Because look, here's one of the, and I'm sure we'll get to this at some point, but this July 30th date that they opened Crossfire Hurricane, remember that, and this is when I talk about the challenges that we've had at the highest levels of DOJ and FBI back when, in 17 and 18. I mean, they've denied that this was ever, that anything occurred pre-Crossfire Hurricane, which you and your audience, and I think most people that follow this know that's total crap. Yeah. I mean, so we got a big, that's when you hear me talk about, we're looking at the Mueller team, or we're looking at people that were at higher levels that kept things from us. That's one of the big issues we're looking at. Why did the people at the FBI and DOJ, why have they insisted that nothing occurred till after July 30th, 2016? It's just nonsense. So, but anyway, so on the Fusion GPS bank records, so we used a subpoena to get that. Because we suspected all along that it was they were working for some operative, right? You don't just put all that together unless you're working for some political operative. And so, they were, they tried to launder it through a law firm and all of that. But you probably know this, and I'm not going to say too much about it. I'm going to let the pleadings stand for themselves. But, I am in federal court suing Fusion GPS under the RICO statutes. So I would just direct you to my latest pleading that we had and complaint that we filed here about 10 days ago.
That's
I didn't know that. That's a new one for me. Thank you.
Teacher's desk.
Yeah. So that's I believe that they are a racketeering outfit. They're very, very dangerous. They masquerade as First Amendment crusaders when really all they are mercenaries. That destroy people's lives. What they did to the Trump campaign and what they've done to me and my family, and what they did to Halverson, what they did. I mean, just the list is long, and they're really, really bad actors. that should be reined in, and that's what I'm trying to do. I've said that I'm going to bring justice wherever I can, including, if I don't have subpoena power because I'm not, obviously not, I don't hold the gavel anymore as chair of the committee. I still have my own personal rights, as an American citizen, and I intend to enforce the laws on the books, and that's why I filed as chair of the RICO case in federal court in Virginia.
Well, that Devin, that's why I said before we got on the air, I think that there's probably millions of people right now who wish you were a senator, because you might have a gavel in your hand somewhere. And Tracy, did you have something to ask? Because I actually wanted to ask a follow up on the media end of things.
No, go ahead. You can go do that. We'll circle back.
Okay. Oh no, then you go, and I'll ask later then.
No. Hit it.
Well, okay. Well, then my thing here is I was watching Eric Holder on MSNBC the other night, going after Bill Barr and talking about the sanctity of law. We hear a lot about that these days. And it was surprising in the least, but it wasn't surprising, I should say. But the thing here is that, and you brought up with Fusion GPS and what they masquerade as, I would have to throw that accusation at like 97% of the corporate media at large, because even Fox News isn't you can't even rely on them most of the time to put anything really amazing out there. But we've seen that about this overwhelming majority of the media is working alongside of not only just the DNC, because citizens have seen that this is really a bipartisan, no party, uniparty kind of a company, men and women just going to preserve whatever they had in place. And it doesn't really have anything to do with partisan politics. They use that as a tool there to keep people fighting with each other. But they're active participants. The media, they're active participants in the criminal leaking that shaped the atmosphere that we live in right now, as well as provided for the rationale for these long, destructive, ultimately fruitless investigations. Do you see, outside of civil suits, you were just talking about your ability as an individual to go out and fight whatever battles you can, but do you see any kind of accountability for the media outside of civil action? Because this is domestic propaganda. It's subversion of the worst order. This is the thing that frustrates most people.
Well, let me first help you. I'll give you some advice. You don't have to take it; it's free. So,
okay.
But I've learned one thing in life that's made my life so much easier, and that is, so after we were talking earlier about when I went out and made public aware of the unmaskings that were occurring. That's probably the first time you guys have ever even heard of me or even knew there was such a thing called the Intelligence Committee. Because we tended to be just underground, and you only heard from people on the Intelligence Committee when there was a terrorist attack or something along those lines. After that, I was absolutely shocked. Instead of the media wanting to, because there's always been these concerns about the 702 and 215 programs that we were talking about earlier, and it was always the mainstream media and ACLU and the left who said, "Oh, Bush created these, and they're spying on you, and they're abusing the system." And looking back, I should have known that they were the ones abusing the system in retrospect. But all these, what I call, the media rats and freaks that are out there that are essentially just, puppets. They're either working directly for the DNC and operatives or indirectly. Okay. When I was shocked at that point of reporters that I had known for 15 years. And just the visceral partisanship that came out. They were just so mad at me that I would dare do this. And now when you look back, look at how many people were doing the unmaskings. All of those that we now know, a lot of those players, they were all calling all of these reporters, I'm sure, saying, we have to stop this guy. This is what he's doing. He's ruining intelligence, of course. He's ruining the intelligence services. He's going to ruin the FBI. You guys have heard all these stories.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was shocked at that. And then, of course, I was just the hit pieces had already started coming before that, right? They run these hit pieces on you, like, and I'm just going to kind of paraphrase some of them, but at first it's like, who's Devin Nunes? Oh, he's a dairy farmer. He's a farmer. What a moron. He's not like all the other guys that are Harvard graduates and lawyers. No, this guy's just a farmer, and then at the end, the whole story would be laced with, he was on the Trump transition team. Not sure that he can really do an investigation. That crap had already started, right? Before I went out and did the, and made the statements on the unmasking. But then after that, I was just getting hit with fake news story after fake news story. And here's where I'm going to give you my advice. So at that point, I don't watch any of those shows at all. I don't even click on a story. I don't click on any of those stories. I don't want them having my IP address. I don't want them getting a click. So I refuse to from my own devices, I refuse to click on any of these stories and read them. Even like when people send out stuff that they agree with on Twitter or what have you, I don't give them any clicks. And I don't even really read it, except where it deals with, when there's something that's defamatory. But I don't pay attention to anything that they write or say, because it's just totally useless. It's just totally useless. And in fact, I've learned actually by following citizen journalists like yourselves, that I can get a pretty good assessment when when one of one of these stories comes out. There's so many people that are out there in the Twitter world and that are citizen journalists that quickly do an assessment. And you guys know them all. You follow all them. I mean, there's some really great writers that have come out of all of this. Mm-hmm. So I never click because I never have to, because they'll just say, here's what the fake news CNN said. They said this line, and this line, and and then they'll have the rebuttal to it, and that's all I really got to read. So my advice to you guys is don't read that crap. But but seriously, thank you though for reading it, so I don't have to. Clicking on it.
Look, there's isn't there like more of a serious aspect? Like they're literally working hand in hand with the intelligence community at this point, the rogue intelligence community. Like they're taking illegal leaks and they're broadcasting them out, and they're brainwashing half of the American people. There's no way to hold these folks accountable for this at all. Yeah,
so that was kind of gave you my advice on life is too short to read that garbage. But on a serious note, we have to have the only way we're going to fix this problem that we have in this, which is a major problem, which has been the collapse of the free press, because it's really the controlled press is what it is. I'm not even joking when I say that the press is no different than what Pravda was to the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. It really, there's no difference, and it's getting worse. And there's a lot of reasons for it, right? I mean, one of the reasons is they're the old, kind of the old legacy media business model collapsed, right? I mean, newspapers are going by the wayside. A lot more competitors popped up. Billionaires came in, and they all created their own little news sites that they have. And it just so happens that when you have 90% of the content being developed from left-wing perspective, or just flat out, a Fusion GPS operation, just giving it to their chosen reporters, or their people within, the larger deep state, which is really just the bureaucracy in DC, right? Mm-hmm. It's left-wing bureaucracy that's permanently here, and that's what we've seen. That's what you've seen, kind of the outing of a lot of these people that are here in the swamp. So when you follow all of that through, and then you go from the 90% of the content going through the filter of Twitter and Google and Facebook, the big three. You can imagine what actually comes out, what actually people are seeing. It makes it really hard for that person that's out there that doesn't like politics, thinks they're a moderate, they're an independent, they don't care about politics. It makes it very hard for Republicans or Trump to even reach those people. And that's the real danger going forward. I mean, that's why you see Donald Trump, it's very hard. We have no chance to win the popular vote anymore, Republican candidate, because these minds are just being completely poisoned. And look, this has been a successful model that's been used throughout history. We're just at a different stage right now because unlike where Pravda was the only source for news back in the Soviet Union days, maybe there were a couple others. And if you tried to start up something else, you got killed, right? You just disappeared, like what
Don't
happened
say
in
that.
China.
That's scary.
But here, essentially, the tech companies are allowing the same thing to happen, right? And you got they'll wave the Democrats in Congress. They wave their big hammer. Elizabeth Warren. You're a monopoly, Facebook, Google, or mob. We're going to break you up. That's all a big joke, right? It's a big joke. They wave that around like we're really taking on these monopolies and these big tech companies. They're actually not. They're all in on the gig, right?
Yeah.
It's like you threaten us, and we got it. We'll keep doing it. We know exactly what to do. We know exactly what to do. We got a filter, right? Zuckerberg and Obama. This is all fake news is why Trump won. We're going to do it. That's why. As you know. So getting to your question, Frank. Sorry, but that's why I'm suing. That's why I'm suing Twitter. That's why I'm suing for defamation for all of these news companies, and I keep building these cases out. And of course, I'm one of the few people that's in this position because I was targeted, right? Yeah. I was targeted, by the entire machine. So I'm trying to, and I have and on the other side of this is that, this garbage lives forever. I have no other way to clear my name. Unless those stories are taken down.
Right.
And so I'm left with no choice because, at the end of the day, on 100 years from now, those stories are still going to be up unless the courts step in to do something. So the three branches of government have an opportunity to save us, but the judges and the judicial branch side of government has to step up and do their job. And I will say that, for the most part, my cases are moving along. They're slow because, of course, none of these media companies want to meet me in court. They do stall tactic after stall tactic after stall tactic. Which is kind of funny. The irony in all that is that, if they really wanted to destroy me, they could do it really easy. All they have to do is meet me for discovery in court, right? Because if these stories are actually true, all these fake news stories are true about me. And all they got to do is say, "Hey, these are true. You're damn right. We'll meet you in discovery," because they would destroy me. They'd finish off my career. But that's what also shows me I'm right over the target because all they do is run and scurry around and they write fake news stories about lawsuits. It's kind of hysterical to watch. So the key here is will the judicial branch of government enforce the law and finally realize that we can't let these basically state-run media outlets by the Democratic Party slander and defame conservatives. And we can't let the tech companies filter this out and treat Republicans and conservatives different than they treat Democrats and the left. We have to have a true public square. If they're supposedly not developing content, then they need to not develop content. And that is not what Facebook, Google, and Twitter are doing.
Agreed. And that's a great segue, actually, because I wanted to ask you, since we have a few minutes left here, gracious with your time with us today. Thank you so much. What do you think? Everybody is frustrated. They want to know when people are getting arrested. I know you address this all the time, but what do you think is going to happen? Are we going to see in the next 6 to 8 weeks something really, actually, finally come out that holds somebody accountable in a court of law? And can we even count on the judicial branch to work correctly in that instance?
Well, you would. I had a meeting last night with several members of Congress where we were discussing just this, and I will tell you, a lot of the members of Congress are skeptical. Republicans. We're very skeptical of DOJ and FBI and whether or not we're going to see accountability here. My opinion, I've always been very positive and hopeful on this, and I remain so. And it's largely because you're not seeing any leaks, okay, which I think is always a good sign. And coming from the Durham investigation, nobody even paid attention to the U.S. attorney out of Missouri. Nobody was even watching.
Yeah,
that.
Jensen.
And the problem's going to be here for these guys that committed these crimes is that all you got to do is look at what Horowitz found and what's now come out in the last few weeks, plus of course everything that we've put out in our report. The evidence is very damning. The evidence is very, very damning. There's just a lot of it, right? So, I guess the best example that I would have of that people should probably pay close attention to is if there's a original 302 from the Flynn interview, that's going to be a big problem. It's going to be a big problem if that 302 exists. That's a lot of evidence. It's a lot of evidence.
Did you see the 302 or were you just briefed on the 302?
We were briefed on the 302, right? So we were briefed. So there had to have been a 302. There had to have been a report, right? So, nobody ever said, "Oh, there's a 302 was written on this date," but there had to have been one, or else they couldn't have briefed us on the Flynn situation. So that would have already been. I don't remember the date, but it would have been weeks. Probably at least 3 weeks after was when we were briefed on this, maybe even longer. So there was there had to have been an original 302. It kind of infers it in the Department of Justice's filing to dismiss the Flynn case. If that exists, that's just one example. If you look at the closed the communication to close the Flynn investigation on January 4th, the text messages. There's just overwhelming evidence that, I don't even know. One thing that hasn't happened is there hasn't been any leaks of people who have been interviewed. That tells me probably the people who are in the most trouble haven't been interviewed. Maybe they're not going to be interviewed, because there's a lot of evidence out there that you could build a really strong indictment
without needing to even talk to them. That's my take. Wow.
And why? This is just me speculating here, but my gut feeling, just being investigating this crap for the last 3.5 years, is I wouldn't waste my time with them because they're not going to tell you anything. Now, one would say, well, maybe they'd lie, and if they lied to FBI or whatever, but
you have some bigger stuff.
I just bring the indictments, and then decide who you're gonna, and then let them defend themselves, let them fight it all out amongst themselves.
Very cool. One last question for you, real quick. We have a minute left or so in your gracious time with us today. So Congressman Jim Jordan and Congressman Mark Meadows were interviewing James Baker back in October of 2018. And Baker mentioned John Durham at the time as investigating a leak that happened between I believe it was David Corn, I might be incorrect. That means that Durham was poking around here back way before anybody had ever heard his name, and appointed by Sessions, given the timeline. Do you think if he finds something while he's poking around to figure out this leak, he doesn't just pretend he didn't see it and walk away, correct?
I just can't imagine that. No. I guess I didn't catch that.
Oh, yeah.
I learned something from you guys. I got to go back and read that.
Yes,
I got to go back and read
I'll send
that.
It to you.
That's interesting. But obviously, we know about the leaks too. That happened all through the year. Actually, Lee Smith, who I know has been on your show a number of times. If you go back, he's really done a good job building the chronology of all the leaks that occurred in 2016, and how it would go from the media would come out with a story, and then the Clinton campaign would talk about it, and just on and on and on. And I always say that I think that the most telling one that there was a division was the famous Halloween story of 2016, where it leaked that there was an investigation into the Trump campaign, but they didn't find anything.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Yes.
I remember that. I always find that one fascinating because that has to be whoever leaked that was somebody who thought, whoa, we're in the middle of some really bad stuff here. We better get the hell out of Dodge because, this was because I believe what they were trying to do when they got the warrant against Carter Page, the FISA warrant, they wanted to go in there and find some type of smoking gun that they could leak right before the election. And I would say they drilled a bunch of holes and came up with dirt, just sand. Mm-hmm. They never got water, oil, whatever metaphor you want to use. They just drilled dry holes. And I think whoever leaked that probably said, whoa, I want to get the hell away from this because if Congress and the American public ever find out, there's going to be hell to pay. And so I think they were trying to just distance themselves from the whole thing and shut it down.
Interesting.
But of course, the impossible happened, which was Donald Trump became the president of the United States, and all the dirty cops, they all doubled down. They all doubled down when they should have just, made this all go away.
Amazing. Hey, listen,
imagine where we'd be, right? I mean, it's really what happened after the election.
Yeah, and without you, honestly, I really mean this. I'm sure I'll speak to you again at some point, but thank you on behalf of me and the American people for everything you've gone through and everything you've sacrificed to make sure that the truth gets out to everybody. It means so much to us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And like I said when we opened, you guys are doing a hell of a job. I mean, and I say that I'm not just pointing you guys out, but there's a lot of you out there, and it makes a big difference because there's force and strength in numbers.
Yeah.
All the work that like I said, the citizen journalists are doing out there. It's been really, really helpful in terms of our investigation because a lot of times I would see something, and I'd go in and ask our team. I say, what about this? And they say, "Where'd you get that from?" I said, "I got my sources. My sources."
Nice. That's great
but look,
to know.
just like this thing, I gotta go look at this transcript now. You just made me aware of. I don't remember that. I'm gonna go check that out.
He sent a letter right after. He sent a letter asking about Durham because he thought that Baker was wrong in talking about John Huber, and he kept trying to correct him. And Baker. This is Baker the lawyer. Or Baker is Baker the lawyer. Baker the lawyer.
The FBI lawyer, right? Because there's all kinds of Bakers. That's why it's so.
Well, I'm arguing.
There's all kinds of James Bakers, right? You got there's former Secretary of State. You got the one from DOJ, and then you've got the one over at the Department of Defense.
Yeah, the net assessment, James Baker.
That's a whole nother can of worms that has to be. That's obviously we're continuing to investigate that too.
Well, I have one quick 30-second question for you, and that is since you're a man of dairy, I would like to ask you definitively, do you consider skim milk even to be milk? Because I think I have always maintained it's just weird cloudy water. What do you say?
I'm actually I prefer 1%. So, but my family members, like the non-fat stuff. No, that's not. That doesn't do anything for me. But then a lot of people in my family say you have to have the whole, the full whole milk.
Yes.
Unpasteurized.
Or even I used to drink that as a kid.
And look how smart you are.
Because we'd get it right straight from our tank, on the farm, and that was old school. We'd let the cream rise. We'd take the cream off and make ice cream and all that. But those were, you don't see a lot of that nowadays.
No, it's a lot of raw milk is illegal.
Yeah,
in most, in New York, I think it's like there's like a black market for it. So
there is you got to be real careful if it's not pasteurized. You really do have to be careful with that because if milk gets hot and you get bacteria, it can be deadly. You never want to have an E. coli infection. It can be very dangerous.
Well,
So
that was my.
you-
That was
there's
my
no
addition.
problem with unpasteurized products, but you got to just make sure they're farm to table and have been handled properly.
See, that was my contribution to the show.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah, I
had.
didn't know we were going to talk about farming. That's my background.
Well, I figured you're already out the door. I just throw something at you real quick, but you handled it well. All right. You passed the test.
Well, guys, well, thank you so much, for everything you've done, and thanks for having me. And hopefully next time we do this, we'll be talking about what stage we're at in the indictments and
Amen.
in the trial. Hopefully.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It was so great to have you on.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
That was something. That was just a great experience. I'm back. It's now Sunday again. That was Friday. Now we're in Sunday. So, Devin Nunes spent about an hour with us, and it was really, really fantastic. Like I said, a lot of people were saying, you should ask this, you should ask that. I know. I had so many things written down, but I think, again, the very last part of that interview was pretty telling, even though there are some pessimistic folks inside Congress there. What he said about there not being any leaks and about how it wasn't necessary to even question these dudes because there's so much information out there to make a strong indictment that questioning them doesn't even matter. Really, really good stuff, guys. Really good stuff. So, there is a lot more coming from me. I promise you. This would never have been possible without your support. So, you can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/TracyBeans with a Z. You can find me at subscribestar.com/TracyBeans with a Z. PayPal.me/TracyBeans. And you can also support Uncover DC, where all of this great stuff is going on. The company that I started to make sure to bring you guys actual journalism that is growing by leaps and bounds every day. Thank you guys so much for everything. This is quite an interview, and I hope you guys will share it with your friends and have a fantastic rest of the weekend. You will be hearing from me very soon. It's going to be tough to top this one, but I might be able to. I might be able to bring you something else too. It's going to be tough. I'll talk to you.